Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we are looking at the hidden reality of global oil reserves. We're going to decode the complex systems running our world and uncover what might actually be a massive illusion of economic stability. You see, experts are warning about a silent crisis right now, one that could soon impact every single household.
Okay, let's dive into this with a simple question. What if the grocery store's back room is empty? Imagine you're walking down the aisles. The shelves look completely normal, right? The manager swears another delivery truck is on the way, so you keep shopping, totally unbothered. But what if that back room is literally bare? What if that truck just fails to show up? Suddenly, out of nowhere, a massive shortage is violently exposed. And you know, this analogy is shockingly close to what's happening in our global energy markets right this very minute.
Think about the price on the sign versus the inventory cushion behind it. When you drive by your local gas station, those prices on the marquee might look perfectly manageable. But what if we're all staring at the exact wrong signal? What if the real warning isn't that glowing price tag, but the invisible inventory cushion sitting behind the scenes? If global reserves are being drained way faster than they can be replaced, the very first shock we feel might not be empty pumps. It'll be a market suddenly waking up to the terrifying reality that its safety net is practically gone. And crazy enough, virtually no one is paying attention to it.
Which brings us to the vanishing cushion. To really grasp what's going on here, we have to understand what is actually protecting the global economy from a catastrophic supply shock. Analysts call this protective layer the cushion, and for months now, experts have been frantically sounding the alarm that this cushion is just vanishing right before our eyes.
So, what exactly is this cushion? Well, it's our strategic reserves, commercial stockpiles, and stored inventory acting as a hidden buffer to absorb disruptions. To be super clear here, the world is absolutely not running out of undrilled oil. There's plenty of it still in the ground. The real issue? We are rapidly depleting this critical, above-ground emergency buffer that keeps your daily life functioning smoothly.
Now, a totally reasonable person might ask, why hasn't the system broken down yet? If inventories have been falling for months, why aren't we seeing mile-long gas lines? Well, it's because our complex system was designed with a cushion, and frankly, it's doing its job. We've aggressively tapped into strategic reserves. Commercial inventories have been drawn way down, and our existing stockpiles are actively compensating for missed deliveries. The lack of gas lines doesn't mean the problem is solved. It literally just means we're actively burning through our global emergency savings to mask the issue.
So the crucial point is this. The world hasn't solved the supply problem. The world has just been simply absorbing it. Think of it like a family that suddenly loses part of its income. At first, they just pull from their savings, right? From the outside, everything looks totally normal, but they're really just living off their financial cushion. That false sense of security is exactly what the entire global energy market is experiencing today.
And this brings us to a ticking clock. The critical time frame we're looking at is mid-July. Analysts have issued specific warnings pointing toward mid-summer for when this buffer might literally run dry. Every single barrel we pull from storage is an emergency backup that simply no longer exists. And when that margin for error shrinks all the way to zero, a very painful economic correction becomes absolutely inevitable.
Which leads us to a fascinating disconnect between markets and physical reality. If we're facing shrinking supplies, why on earth aren't oil prices absolutely skyrocketing right now? To figure that out, we have to look at the massive tug-of-war happening between financial markets and physical reality. Because right now, they are telling two very, very different stories.
Let's start with futures markets. This is a financial system where prices reflect expectations and optimism about future conditions, not just the physical reality we're dealing with today. For months, traders have been assuming these global disruptions are just temporary, that some political deal will get done and shipping lanes will magically go back to normal. So, they're pricing in pure optimism, and that artificially keeps current oil prices looking stable.
And this brilliantly illustrates the great divide we're facing. You have financial markets pricing in future relief, while our physical supply chain is just consuming present inventory. Financial markets run on news headlines, press conferences, and hope. But physical storage tanks, they don't watch press conferences. They follow one harsh, absolute rule. Either the oil is inside the tank, or it's not.
So let's pause for a second and ask, why doesn't a political deal instantly fix physical shortages? It's a super common assumption, right? People think, well, if tensions ease and some politicians sign a paper, wouldn't that instantly solve everything? It kind of seems logical that removing the disruption immediately restores the supply.
But physical systems rarely work at the speed of a breaking news headline. Let's walk through the actual reality of recovery. Step 1. A political deal is signed. Okay, great. Step 2.
Ships actually have to move and infrastructure needs to be repaired. Cargo ships don't teleport. It takes weeks for them to move across the globe. And then step 3, consumed inventories are finally rebuilt. You still have to replace months of a depleted cushion before the system is genuinely healthy again. The lag time here is massive.
So, what happens when that cushion finally runs dry? Let's pivot our explainer away from macroeconomics and global shipping lanes and bring it right down to the micro level, to you. Let's assume the experts are right, and this inventory cushion hits a point where it absolutely cannot absorb any more stress. What actually happens to everyday households?
Well, contrary to what you might see in the movies, the first sign isn't completely empty grocery shelves. The first true sign is price. As physical inventories get incredibly scarce, every remaining barrel of oil becomes vastly more valuable. Buyers start competing fiercely for whatever supply is left, and markets are suddenly forced to reassess all that risk they were happily ignoring. So the crisis actually begins with sudden, really aggressive price spikes.
Now, when we talk about fuel prices, we have to make a crucial distinction between gasoline, which is what everyday drivers feel, and diesel, which is what the broader economy feels. Diesel is the ultimate canary in the coal mine here. Modern economies do not run on gasoline, folks. They run on diesel. Diesel powers the massive freight trucks, it powers commercial agriculture, and it powers the movement of pretty much all physical goods.
Let's move to the diesel ripple effect and see how this builds into a massive wave that hits you directly. Step 1. Diesel costs rise significantly. Step 2. Freight and agricultural costs instantly spike. Step 3. Consumer goods rise, because businesses operating on razor-thin margins have to pass those costs directly on to you. And finally, Step 4. Overall affordability drops. That diesel price hike cascades directly into your weekly grocery bill.
Economists actually have a very specific, somewhat grim term for this phase: demand destruction. This is what happens when a product becomes so incredibly expensive that consumers, businesses, and industries are forced to reduce their consumption simply because they can no longer justify or afford the costs. The products are still sitting right there on the shelf. They aren't gone, but they just become completely unaffordable for a huge chunk of the population. Shortages almost always hit your wallet as a severe affordability crisis long before the goods physically disappear. And once that affordability crisis hits, the behavioral dominoes start falling. Consumers change their habits. Some delay big purchases while others quietly begin to stock up on essentials. Then, as panic buying leaks into the public consciousness, it drastically accelerates the shortages. Others might just ignore the warning signs entirely. But the tragic irony is that our own panicked behavior actually worsens the disruption once we finally realize the safety cushion is gone.
But hey, this explainer isn't about fear, it's about empowerment. So let's talk about building your own margin. We want to take this macroeconomic data and use it to logically protect your own household. If the global system is losing its margin of safety, the solution is pretty straightforward. You need to start building your own margin.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the difference between watching headlines and watching conditions. This requires a fundamental shift in mindset. Most people just watch headlines, constantly reacting to what happened yesterday. But prepared individuals, they watch underlying conditions, preparing for tomorrow. Major disruptions rarely arrive without warning. You just won't find those warnings in a political speech. You find them in the systemic indicators that support everyday life.
So let's talk about some practical preparedness takeaways, highly actionable, calm steps you can take to build personal margin without panicking. First up, keep your vehicle's tank above half full. You just want to avoid getting caught on empty during a sudden price spike. Second, identify your specific household fuel dependencies. Maybe that's gasoline, propane, or generator fuel, and buffer that supply early. Third, maintain a basic pantry of foods your family already actually eats. And finally, monitor diesel prices closely. It is literally one of the most reliable economic signals for what's coming next.
At its core, preparedness is about understanding risk before it becomes glaringly obvious to everyone else. We're not talking about betting on worst-case scenarios or rushing out to build an apocalyptic bunker. It's simply about creating flexibility and options for your family. A household with margin built into its budget has choices. And let me tell you, it is incredibly cheap and easy to build those choices right now, compared to making panicked decisions in the middle of a crisis.
I want to leave you with a core thought that truly summarizes the ultimate value of acting prudently. The best time to build margin is before everyone realizes it's disappearing. Historically, the people who fare the best aren't the ones who flawlessly predict every single crisis. They're the ones who recognize when the safety cushion is getting dangerously thin, and they act before the broader public, who are all still distracted by the evening news, even notices.
Which brings us to our final provocative question. Will you wait for the evening news to tell you the cushion is gone? Or will you build your margin today? The data clearly shows our global economic buffer is shrinking, and physical reality is threatening to catch up with market optimism. Knowing this, are you going to wait for a news anchor to tell you the safety net is completely gone? Or will you take level-headed action today? Awareness gives you choices. Use that advantage. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I highly encourage you to start looking closely at the conditions around you right now.